All right. Oh, we got some more folks joining. Well, welcome everyone to the Perfect Your Post Grad Pitch Talk today. My name is Martin McGovern. I'm the founder and lead coach at Career Therapy. And a little bit about myself and where I'm coming from. I come from the world of marketing and advertising. So, very much steeped in the world of behavioral psychology, what makes people tick, how to communicate in effective ways, and just really, how to kind of manipulate people and get their money. Like that's sort of what marketing is, right? And over the years, as I made the transition from marketing into education and started becoming a career coach, I found that a lot of what we use in marketing is incredibly applicable to the job search, because this is what companies want to hear from you in order to know the value that you bring, in order to know the worth of your role, and in order to get those big bucks that you want. So I kind of reverse engineer a lot of what I used to do in the marketing world to help you get money back from companies now, and negotiate yourself some good roles. Today we'll be talking about all sorts of different things, from the emotional side of the job search, the stuff that kind of gets us stuck in our heads, and the promotional sides, how to actually pitch yourself in effective ways. And I have a lot of experience working with different boot camps and schools all over the country, and helping people going through the same transition that you're going through. So if you have questions, of course, interrupt me at any time. But we'll just jump right in. Early congratulations! I hear you have graduation right around the corner. So I know you're all hard at work, and jobs is like that next thing right beyond that date. So we'll be getting into it, and helping you get ready for it, because this is the face that you're going to be making every day, staring at your computer, just going, how the hell do I get these people to open my resume and bring me in for an interview, right? That's the big question. So what do we need to do? This is the general layout of our conversation today. We're going to talk about putting them first. We're going to talk about sharing your unique stories. And we're going to talk about how to perfect your post-grad pitch. Now, when I say put them first, the reason that we're starting there is because so much of the emphasis of the job search is a huge spotlight on the individual job seeker. Does anyone feel this way when you're like reading articles and talking about pitching yourself and branding yourself and like selling yourself to these companies? It's just such a large microscope about like find your passion and communicate in all these different ways. Anyone feeling that way? I'm seeing a couple of nods. What sort of things have you been coming across? What's the typical advice that you hear when you're being told to pitch yourself?
I guess be yourself. Right?
Be yourself, right? And then you go out and you be yourself, and they say we went with someone with more experience, and you're like, what the hell? Right? So these are the things that we're going to start talking about, right? Generally speaking, they always say 3 years of experience on the job board. Well, what the heck does that actually mean? Do they need 3 years experience? What is 3 years experience? Is it 3 years experience in this one technology? What is it? So the main thing that I want you to start doing, because we get really caught up in imposter syndrome and worrying whether or not we're like perfect for the role, is to kind of take the spotlight off of us a little bit and say, why is this company hiring for this role in the first place? What is it they're struggling with? What problems do they have? And what skills do I have that could help them with those problems? We want to make it all about them. And we want the goal of our conversations with companies and interviews and networking to be about building trust and building rapport. Now, trust starts with you. You have to trust that you can do the job, right? So, who here is feeling imposter syndrome to some degree?
Oh yeah, definitely me over here.
All right. What does it look like for you? What does it look like for you?
Oh, so when I was starting my capstone, I struggled. So this is a final project for us. I kind of you're talking in regards to job search or just generally in
Just general.
the field. Okay, so I started using templates and I was like, I don't know how to read this. I don't know how to code this. I'm like, I've never used this language before, so
Mm-hmm.
like, yeah, I don't know how to code, so I'm probably gonna fail.
Yeah. And then your mind starts to race, right? Like, why would they ever hire
Yep.
me? What, everyone else has more experience than me. Why would anyone ever even give me a chance? Right. So we go down that rabbit hole. Anyone else feeling imposter syndrome? What's it looking like for you? Similar,
Yeah,
different?
I do. And really, for me, I know that each one of us, when we start looking for jobs, and I know everybody's already been looking and probably applying and stuff like that, but we're looking at, very exact information as far as what our skill set is. And I think for me, my biggest thing is, like Python has Flask, it has Django, it has all these different frameworks that go along with it. But what if they throw a question at me that is revolved around a framework that I have never touched, never seen, and maybe, yeah, it's right there with Python, and maybe you should know some of this, but I don't know any of it. Did I just completely burn a bridge, and how big was the bridge that I burned?
Yeah. That's a really big, that's a really big hill to battle, right? And I
Right.
think what you're hitting on is a really good point, right? What do we do when we don't have the answer? And I think the general advice for job seekers is to prepare for every eventuality, right? Just have an answer for everything. Just download this list of 700 questions and come up with an answer for every possible question and drive yourself insane, right? um, when I very much am a fan of going the opposite route, rather than trying to get and rather than trying to prepare ourselves to the point where nothing will go wrong, what we should be doing is preparing ourselves to respond better when things go wrong. So, what do I mean by that? All right, taking your example, you're in an interview and they say, have you ever worked with X framework? And your answer is no, I've never worked with X framework. All right. When you're nervous and you think you should have worked with every framework because, well, they're asking me about it, so I should have done that, right? Our response is something along the lines of, well, no, I haven't really worked with that framework. And then it's quiet and it's awkward. And they look down at their sheet and they make a little pencil note. And then they go, okay, next question. And you go home and have a full on panic attack because you don't know what the hell just happened, right? Versus saying, well, I don't have experience with that particular framework. However, I have used Python and I've used these frameworks within Python. And I was able to get up to speed on those pretty quickly, 3 to 6 weeks to learn the basic framework and be able to utilize it well. What is this new framework and how does it play into this role? Is it a significant piece of this role or is it kind of a smaller piece of this role? And how do you expect to use it to solve the different goals for this role? I have a feeling I could get up to speed in 3 to 6 weeks, and I'm excited to learn it. Very different response, right? Very different way of engaging. One opens up the conversation and allows you to learn more about the role, about that framework, and about how quickly you can learn it. And the other one shuts down a conversation just by saying, I don't have the thing, right? So if someone were to ask me as a coach, like, have you ever worked with someone who has visa issues? Well, the answer is yes. And also, there's a limitation to what I can do there. So let's talk about what can be done within the limitations, right? So it's about talking about what's possible rather than what has already happened, if that makes sense. And we can definitely talk more about that. Does that sort of give some context to, what you're feeling, or do you have any follow-up questions on that?
Yeah, that's I like your response to everything. Do you have any advice on gearing our minds, in the moment towards something like that? Because I don't know about everybody else, but I would not be thinking on that level in the moment. I would freeze up and yeah, completely screw up everything.
Yeah, well, and I'll even push back on completely screw up everything. You might mess up that interaction, but you won't screw up everything. And like I have a really bad anxiety disorder. So like I come from a place where back in the day, I would literally sit in an informational interview and my throat would like have a frog in it so bad I wouldn't be able to finish sentences. So like a lot of this is practice. And the goal is actually to kind of mess things up, to see your resilience and to grow from that. So like use the bad experiences to inform the good ones, right? So like my worst experience ever was trying to, I went to an informational interview that I actually thought was a real interview. So I wore a suit and it was all very awkward. And I didn't practice my elevator pitch, even though I got this informational interview because I was in a class and they said, who has an elevator pitch? And I was like, I have one. And they were like, oh, meet this person. And I studied everything about the company, but forgot to prep myself, right? And so like, he's like, so tell me who you are. Why are you here? I said, oh, I gave a good elevator pitch in class and they said I should meet you. Okay, give me your pitch. And I literally couldn't get words out of my mouth. Like that's how bad it was. All right. And then he's like, what questions do you have for me? And I go, I have no questions because I'd answered them all by doing research prior to the meeting. And like 10 minutes later, I'm like standing in the snow in Chicago, like I got hit by a bus, like wondering what the hell just happened. And the truth of the matter is that like there is a balance between over preparation and under preparation where you leave enough unknowns while also understanding the value you bring and being able to play in that space. But you have to practice a little bit to get there. And the silver lining to that story is years later, I reached out to him and said, thanks for the learning experience. You probably don't remember who I am, but I had the worst information of my interview of my life with you. And he's like, yeah, I have no idea who you are, but I opened your email, let's get coffee. And it was all, wonderful. We had like a 3-hour coffee about how he runs his business. But the goal of what I'm trying to say here is mess up. It's okay to mess up. You're going to mess up. Don't try not to mess up. Try to get better at recovering from your mess up. So I ramble like crazy. Like that, you're going to know in this call here today, I'm going to ramble. The question is, how do I get back on track after I ramble? So in an interview, I'll say something like, sorry, I get really excited about these things. Let me restate the question and sum up the answer really quickly. And then that just shows them that I'm excited, not that I'm a nervous person who rambles, right? So there's always a way back. All right. So what I'm going to be talking about today, and to answer your question, Mike, how do you get yourself into that mindset? It really is about thinking about them. All right. Right now we're thinking about us. So when I don't know the answer, I get flustered. Rather, what I should be thinking is, I don't know the answer, but what are they trying to get out of this question? Right? If I can switch my mindset from focusing on myself and being impressive myself, and instead say, well, what is it that they need? And maybe I just need to ask a follow-up question to get that information. And then I can actually give a good answer. Now we're moving somewhere, right? Like, do I have every answer to every job search question that you could possibly ask me? There's no way. But if I don't know the answer, can I come up with something and then point you in the right direction? Most likely. And that's where I'm trying to help you all get to. All right. So things not to say. All right. I recently graduated and am excited for the opportunity to learn in this role, receive mentorship, and build my career. Again, if we're just thinking about ourselves, this sounds great, doesn't it? But if we're thinking about the person we're talking to, what do you think they hear when you say something like this? What goes through their head?
I don't know anything.
They didn't think a lot of hand-holding is going to be necessary for this person.
You're all on the right track. Hi, I'm inexperienced, unemployed, and need you to teach me. I will cost this company a lot of money. Right? Because we value a mentor and we value education. What do they value? Do they value giving are companies sitting around going, boy, we make so much money, let's educate people? No, they go, we make so much money, let's hire people to make even more money, right? Or we're not making enough money and we need to make more money, let's hire people to make more money, right? Obviously oversimplifications, but you get what I'm saying. So what should we say instead? What do you think? What should the them first approach be?
I really like what you guys are doing.
I like what you guys are
Right.
doing. I understand what you guys are doing. I get how my skills can help you do that better. And I'd love to bring those skills to your team and help. All right. So you put yourself in their shoes, you understand what they care about, and you figure out why they're hiring for this position. The biggest thing that I see is that we put companies on pedestals when we shouldn't. We the one complaint that I always find interesting is someone will say, I went to the interview and I sat down and it seemed like they'd never even read my resume. How dare they? How dare they not read my resume before bringing me in? I spent all this time applying and writing their essay questions and all these different things. And I go, okay, sure. But maybe we have too high of expectations of companies. Maybe we think they're too perfect when in reality they're not, right? Why do you think they haven't read your resume by the time they sit down in front of you? What are some possible explanations?
There's two people handling situations. Like if it's a bigger corporation, there's one person going through all the resumes, and then passes on to another person who's a hiring person who says, hey, this person might be a good candidate, and passes them on to this person over here.
Exactly. I've actually been pulled into interviews when I wasn't supposed to interview someone that day. And literally they just came by my desk and said, hey, we need someone to jump in and do this interview. And I'm like, okay. And I went to Google and I downloaded a list of interview questions. And that's what I asked the person that day, right? Like sometimes they're just responding, sometimes they're stressed out. So it's good to put yourself in their shoes and also realize that they want you to win. They really do, because it costs a lot of money to hire. So the more people they have to interview, the more time that they're being taken away from their real job, the more stress they have in writing up the reports from the interviews. Like they want this to end. Now it still gets dragged on too long because of committees and stuff like that. But they are actually hoping that you're going to convince them that you're the right person so that they don't have to keep looking. All right.
Is there a chance that it could ever be that, let's say a company is starting up a new like division or something like that, and that they're, like Colin said, maybe there's a lot of people involved in this hiring process and interview process, but could it also be a chance that they are hiring that many people?
Oh yeah. It's all of the above. We're just kind of brainstorming ideas here, but the idea that we're trying to really hit home is that we want to always lead with a more empathetic view of the people on the other side, even if it's incorrect, because it'll help keep you more sane. All right. I think it's like a David Foster Wallace thing where it's like, always assume the person that cut you off on the highway is like driving their dying kid to the hospital, right? It's probably not true, but it'll make you feel better, and make you not so road ragey. And what ends up happening in the job search is that we get rejected and we get ghosted and we apply and we hear nothing back. And we start to get really jaded and we start to get really negative. And then we stop being helpful and we go to interviews and we're like, I'm just going to answer your questions and leave. And then they're like, well, I don't want to work with that person. And then you continue this cycle of not getting hired. What we want to do instead is control the tone. The tone should be, I'm curious about your company. I'm here to help. And what is it you need? What are you struggling with? That tone is way better than I'm the best. Or, companies don't like arrogant people, and companies don't like people who completely lack confidence. They want you somewhere in the middle of I've got good skills. You've got problems. Let's make this work. And that tends to be that sort of aloof, helpful, not desperate kind of tone we're going for. I know it's a really hard one to strike, especially if you do start getting desperate, financially and things like that. But we want to hold on to that kind of, I know I have skills. I also know I have a lot to learn. And both can be true, right? You can be equipped to learn while you do it, while also not knowing everything, right? So again, the first thing we have to do is understand what they want. Then the second thing we have to do is understand that we have enough knowledge to help them do those things once we're there. right? You might not know how to do everything that a UX person or a developer might need to do, but you definitely know more than the person that's hiring you because they're literally hiring you so they don't have to do it. like I might know how to declog a sink, but I'm hiring a plumber because they know how to actually do all the things, right? So does a plumber know how to unclog every single possible thing that could possibly be in there? I'm sure they could figure it out once they come across it, right? Like that's the goal. You just need to know that you can figure it out once you're there. And a way we can do this is to get away from these I and me statements. So often I'll come across someone's cover letter and it will just be like all I statements. Has anyone written their cover letter this way? My name is, I've done this, I want to work here, I can't wait to hear from you. Anyone's this ringing any bells for folks? We want to flip this entire conversation the opposite way. Rather than talking about yourself first, and this is the same with like networking, right? Instead of saying, hi, my name is Martin, here is my resume, will you meet with me? Which no one wants to read your resume. You say, hey.
Now, as a joke, sorry. So as
Go
a
ahead.
joke, do we talk in third person instead? Like, hey, like this person is Cullen. Like Cullen is interested in your job. Cullen has done this.
Yeah, like I do my own voiceover for a podcast or something. Yeah. What we want to do is we want to say, your company is exciting. Your company is doing cool things. Your company is striving to be bigger than you are, and you need help. Here's how my skills can help you. I can't fix your company, but I can contribute to these things. All right. So when we write a cover letter, the first paragraph should say, your company's mission of trying to do X resonates with me because my work also contributes to X. All right. I'm being a little simplistic here, but you get what I'm saying. Then back it up with your background. All right. Start with them, then talk about how you can help them, then talk about how together you're going to make that company great. All right. So what we're trying to do is switch this perspective. And whose perspective are we trying to switch to? Recruiters, hiring managers, CEOs, networking contacts. Each of these people has a different incentive. All right. Try to think of their incentives. What is a recruiter's incentive? Cullen, I love your motto here. I embarrass myself to the point that I can no longer get embarrassed. It's great. I actually have literally bombed interviews just to see how bad they can go. And they're not that bad. Like a bombed interview is actually a fairly
It could
pleasant
have
experience.
like they usually go a lot worse than what they could go, and so sometimes I go apply to companies. I had interviews and I don't do my homework for them. I was like, yeah, I've done this, I've done that. Like your company's like, this is the first I've heard of it. Like I just went on the job site and just started doing stuff and started sending out applications. But like you learn a lot more not knowing versus knowing before you go in, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
You know more about yourself, you know more about you know more about yourself and like what you're doing in that situation. Some of these people in this call can confirm that like I will just talk, especially like about really embarrassing things that have happened to me. But like in order for like I'm not like I've already been embarrassed about that. Like that bridge has been embarrassed already. Like I'm gonna go ahead and talk about that. Like I'm fine with just doing that. Like that's just it's who I am, I guess.
For sure. And the key thing is to then take that and tie it back to the company and how you can help. So like if I were to share, I just shared my story about bombing an informational interview. That's a great story to tell because it's relevant to all of you who are worried about bombing informational interviews, right? But if I were just like saying that to my friends at a party, they'd be like, cool, dude. Why are you telling us this story, right? And so it's context, right? So we want to be able to say, here's what I'm doing and here's why you should care. So when you talk to a recruiter is not incentivized to help someone graduating at a boot camp. Why? What do you think? Why are they not incentivized to help you?
Because we're probably not the best coders they will have.
And that's an assumption that they care about coding skill. What they actually care about, and I've talked to plenty of recruiters, and sometimes I throw them under the bus, but sometimes I try and be more generous. But generally speaking, recruiters are paid by companies to place someone, right? So they get a percentage commission of your salary. Well, why would they place people who make the least amount of money if their paycheck is reliant on getting a percentage of your salary? The incentive is not aligned. This is why people who graduate boot camps tend to get ghosted by recruiters so much, because it's a numbers game for those people, because they're just trying to place as many people as possible. Now, changing industries and changing careers is also a bit of a more difficult story to tell. What's easier, going to a company and saying, we're going to poach this guy from Google and have him work at your place? Or is it easier to say, well, this person just graduated from a boot camp, and before that they were working in customer service, and then they were trying to do these things? Like, much harder story. So if you're going to work with a recruiter, you better help them tell that story. Otherwise, you're going to be too much work and they're not going to have the energy and time to help, right? So we always have to look at the incentives. What does the CEO care about? How does that different from a hiring manager, right? A hiring manager cares about how the team functions. A CEO might care about more the big picture in the industry. And so you can ask industry questions to the CEO and more team-based questions to the hiring manager. Do you get where I'm going with all this? Cool. And we really, if we want to figure it out, have to dig in to what the ROI of our role is. Does anyone know what the ROI of your role is? Maybe not like to the number, but like generally, what does your role contribute to?
The last ROI that I know is like return on interest.
Return
I
on
assume
investment.
Yeah. And I'm assuming it's what do they get from hiring you in the long
Exactly.
term?
Because we're sitting there saying, how come this company didn't give me $70,000? When what we should be asking is, did I convince them that I'm worth more than $70,000? Because if they're going to pay you 70, they need to make some percentage more than that to justify the hire. Otherwise, you're a drain on the budget and they need to let you go, right? And that happens all the time to people, right? They can't justify the role anymore, so the role gets cut. So what is it that you do, and how does it contribute to the bottom line of the business? Does it retain customers? Does it attract customers? Does it convert customers? Does it, build B2B relationships? Does it launch new products? What does your job do to their bottom line? Does anyone have any thoughts? What roles are you applying to? And what do you think the ROI of your role is to a business? Why are they hiring for that role?
Actually, I would love for you or anyone to demystify the role of a junior developer, and like, why is that so? Why is that an industry standard, and why? Because I do feel like those are the positions I'm ultimately qualified for, and happy to, utilize all these techniques here. Here.
So when you say
convey.
demystify the role of a junior developer, what's the mist that we're demisting?
Like, what kind of? I'm still a little unclear on what their role consists of, and what level of expertise the prospective hires should be.
Well, I'll talk to you from the hiring perspective. And obviously this isn't universal, but these are just some things to think about. So we need a developer on our team. All right. So I'm running a business and someone on my team says, hey, we need another developer, or we need to hire a developer. Why? What is going on in the business that leads to that conversation? What do you think?
The code infrastructure just needs some more maintenance.
Yeah, maybe they need to launch a
More eyes on
microsite.
it.
Maybe they're not converting. Maybe they're not. There's probably 100 problems, right? Maybe they don't even have a website. Maybe they need to make a more interactive website. There's a million reasons. So the conversation starts from, we don't have this and we need it. All right. Then it goes to, well, how do we build that? Do we hire a front end, a back end, a full stack? Do we outsource it? Do we pay someone on Fiverr? 100 different conversations about how to get a developer. Do we know anyone who can do this? Can we do it on WordPress? Can we do it without a developer? So they go through all those conversations and they decide that they need a developer because there's something custom that they want to do. All right. Then they say, who do we know who can do it? They're going to start with people who are in the company. If no one in the company can do it, they're going to say who in the company knows someone who can do it. And that's where most hiring happens, right? A person who knows a person. And then if that doesn't work, maybe they'll hit up recruiters and the job boards. But most jobs are never even posted on job boards. They're hired through networks. So then they get to you and they have to decide if they want a junior or a senior, right? What is the major differentiator between hiring a junior or a senior? Budget, usually. So do we have the budget for a junior, a regular, or a senior, right? And then they're going to put everything in that job description that they possibly can to attract anyone who could do any of those things. And then it gets to you and you go, wait, you want a junior who has 3 years of experience and experience with all these different programs, but that's a senior level person. That doesn't make any sense. Well, because most companies have a junior budget with a senior dream, right? So what ends up happening is that we believe these job boards and we believe that they're accurate, and they're not. They are marketing. They are billboards. They are BS to some degree. They are a cry for help. They're a company saying, we think we need this. And our job as the professional is to say, what parts of that do you really need? And what's your budget? If my skills can fulfill the core needs and fit within the budget, we should be good to go. But you're not going to figure that out by reading the job description. The job description is just going to scare you into not applying. You really only need about 60% of what's in that job description. And then the rest of it has to be worked out in the conversation in the role. Also, how many people here have gotten jobs and then you got hired and a month and a half later, your job is totally different than what they promised? Has anyone been in that position? I'm seeing some hands. So again, these job descriptions mean nothing, especially once you're hired. All right. So what I would do is say, how do I surround myself with people who work in the industry so that when things open up, they're going to just look at my personality and my connections and know that I have the baseline knowledge to get things going. Because most people who are in jobs have not done the thing that they're doing before. They're doing it for the first time, but they have a background that has given them a structure to be able to figure it out as they go. It's a long-winded answer. Did that hit on the question that you have? And do you have any follow-ups?
For sure. Yeah, I think that did a lot. And then I guess ultimately, like, another big takeaway is that the key way of sort of articulating that you do have things to learn is that instead of just saying, it's like almost like I just need that in my back pocket, what you just said, and then the whole, I am familiar with other frameworks within this language, and I could obviously I need more practice articulating.
Yeah, for sure.
Just flipping that. That seems like two of my biggest pieces of artillery.
And that's the key, right? What we're trying to do is connect to their needs. With all of this, connect to their needs. Now, how do you actually figure out what their needs are? Google it. Go to Google. You can do it right now if you want, and type in, why should I hire blank? So I would type in, why should I hire a career coach? And I'll look at all the different articles and all the different websites and all the different contracting companies and all the different individuals who have sites and all the different coach aggregators, and I'll see what they say. What do their sales pages say? What do the Reddit pages say? What are the counter arguments to hiring a career coach? I should know all these things to some degree, right? So if you're a web developer and you type in, why should I hire a web developer? You're going to get a whole bunch of consultant websites, a whole bunch of articles, and a whole bunch of like different things. And then you just go to those pages and one of them will say, here's the 5 reasons why you need to hire a web developer. They will organize your site. They will engage your customers. They will blank, blank, blank. And you copy those and put them on your LinkedIn. And you're done. You might want to change it up a little bit, but they're giving you the answers at the back of the book, right? These companies are having to justify these roles internally. They literally have to put together a proposal for a new role and get the budget approved to hire that role. And they have to say, by hiring this person, we're going to launch this product. And that product is going to make the company X hundreds of thousands of dollars a year in additional sales, which justifies the $80K we're going to pay this person to do the development work. All right. And so if you're contributing to a product that's going to bring in $1 million to the business, you're one of dozens of people that contribute to that. That project needs to justify all those paychecks. And that's the mental math that we can start doing. So if you,
I also think that,
yeah,
I'm sorry.
no, go
I
ahead.
also think that, all businesses and all industries have something in common in the fact that, every industry and every business is always evolving, so they're always going to have people going out of the industry for retirement or whatever it may be, career changes, who knows, and there's new people coming in to fill those junior roles, or they're hiring people for senior roles, no matter what the role is. But I think that this industry in particular, and anything in IT, with, the world being more digital now than it's ever been, and that's not going to change. It's going to continue on that same route,
Yeah.
that this industry is probably hiring more people than any other industry, I would think. And I also think that there's probably already a bigger demand in the industry than they have, people to fill the roles to begin with.
Yeah. And a big thing that you're saying there is like, they're hiring lots of people, right? It's not just you. They're trying to put a team together. And why would they hire a junior? Well, budget, maybe. Maybe they just truly don't have a site that's complex enough to justify, someone. Maybe they just need, maybe you're like working with restaurants and they just need basic WordPresses. Maybe you're working with small businesses. They need something more customized, but it's not like an interactive LMS or something like that, right? Like there's all sorts of different levels. And what we need to do is figure out where we're coming in. Basically, a junior role is just a lower risk role, right? And you can start thinking about companies and hiring teams as people trying to manage risk. Why didn't they hire me? They thought I was too risky. They thought I might quit. They thought I might not be able to do the job. They didn't think that I would work with the team well. Whatever the thing was, there's probably 100 reasons. They're trying to manage risk. I'm seeing some hands up. So Brandon, go ahead.
I think Ronnie was ahead of me.
Oh,
Go for it, bro. Go
yeah.
for it.
Okay.
We'll get both.
All right. So how do you feel about the idea that we should apply to like senior dev jobs anyways? Obviously not exclusively, but the idea that perhaps the devs miscommunicated with HR. They just said, we really need help. And HR said, ooh, I've got money in the budget and let's hire somebody that will be good, right? And so senior dev sounds better than junior dev. So we'll hire a junior dev or a senior dev when really the job doesn't require that much gunpowder. Is that something that you see frequently? Because I've heard it from other places that that's a recommendation. Is that something that you see, or is that?
I think so. Junior and regular levels, I would go for. Senior, take a look at the requirements. I mean, again, with a grain of salt. What you don't want to be is in a job that you can't do, right? So that's why we ask questions like, what am I actually going to be doing on a day-to-day basis? What will I be measured on? What are the outcomes you're looking for? If you truly can't do that, you don't want to be in that role because you're going to fail in that role and then you're going to get let go and that's going to be a whole thing. And so what we're looking for is that companies don't always know how to title things and they don't always know what they're looking for. If if you're not going to get through the filter, like the ATS applicant tracking system that scans the robot that scans your resume, and if you don't have the requirements, they spit you out. Like if the question is, should I spend 20 more minutes trying to find the perfect job, or should I apply to this role? I say apply to the role. If the question is, should I be exclusively applying to senior roles? My answer is no. You should be applying to a mix of junior, regular, and potentially senior roles if they're small companies and things like that. But generally speaking, what you want to be doing is using the job board as like a big red flag that says this company needs help, and then go start meeting people at that company, as well as applying for jobs at that company. And usually, one job at a time. Don't apply to too many. It makes you look scattered. So I would say stick to just the baseline roles, and senior might be a bit much depending on your experience. Did that answer your question fully? Cool. And then Ronnie?
I do have two fires that keep coming closer and closer in the way we think of jobs. It's a little bit further away from what we were talking about, but as a hiring manager, what is your view on somebody that kept jumping between jobs, or somebody that's been in the job for years?
Mhm.
Because before I moved to the States, I lost hope in the big corporation system. And when I worked in one, it was the worst experience ever. So since then, I decided I'm not gonna stay too long, because you will start putting up with stuff you're not supposed to, and they will start rely on you, and they will throw more things at you, but you just have to do it. But in the same time, being on the run always can show that you're a fly customer, like you're gonna come in and go like real quick. They're not gonna invest in that. But in the same time, it might show that you are required, like other companies requires you, so they've been trying to get you. So what's your stand on that? Is it better to stay in a company or to leave early?
It's a great question. And there's no perfect answer, but I'll do my best. If I've had people who reach out to me and they say, I hate my job, I want to quit, it's toxic, and I'm being basically abused, but I need to get to that 2-year mark, don't I? Otherwise I'll never get another job. And I'm like, quit, please, get the hell out of there. And I've had people who are career change, who are job hoppers, let's say, who never stick around at a job. I've had ones who never stick around at a job because they keep getting poached and promoted to other roles. And I've had people who never stay at a job because they literally don't get along with people. And so the question is, well, which are you, and what are their assumptions going in? If it depends on what you're looking for more than all the background stuff. I'm someone who has been a job hopper, let's say, anywhere between 6 months with my small contracts to 3-4 years with some of the longer companies. But I've never been somewhere for 10 years except my own business. And I don't think I'm at 10 years with that yet. So it's more in how you tell the story. So when I went full-time, when I was a contractor and I was going to go full-time, the question I got asked is, why do you want to go full-time? Looks like you've been jumping around, working with a lot of startups. Seems like it's been working for you. Why the change? And I would say, it's been fun being on my own, contracting, learning all these things, getting a lot of exposure to a lot of different areas. But I'm at the point where I'm really looking to become part of a team and grow within a team. And that's what's exciting to me about your company, is that I've noticed from my research online that a lot of people will stay with your company for long periods of time. And I'm ready for that. I'm really excited for that, to be able to grow and develop within a company and move up the ranks. And if they're the kind of company that does that, that fosters that, they're going to love that answer. If they're not, they're going to go, well, good for you, but we don't really do that here. Obviously, that's kind of strange that they wouldn't do that, but some companies are churn and burn, right? The flip side, if you've been at a company for 30 years and you've never interviewed for 30 years, you're going to be pretty rusty. And you're going to have one job or one company to talk about the whole interview, and you're going to feel really repetitive. And then you're going to talk with a company that wants innovation, and it's going to be like, well, is this person going to be innovative? Because they've just kind of stuck with one company for a long time, right? And then that grass is always greener thing happens the other way, you know? But if you have a good story to tell of why you're making that change and so on, it really comes down to how you present it. So I think it's neither good nor bad. It's just, what are you looking for now? And can you explain that well? And generally speaking, like 4 years is the average amount of time someone spends in a job. So if you've got some 3-year stints, you're probably pretty reliable. I will say, I had an interview with University of Chicago, and I was like sitting in this big oak room, just like surrounded by like 8 or 9 people who were like very prestigious, right? And I'm like interviewing for this job, and they looked at my resume and they go, "You've worked at like 10 different companies since graduating college. We think you'd be bored here." They literally said that to me in the interview. And I was like, at the time, I was like, no, I need a job. I won't be bored. I would love this. And of course, it didn't work out. But it's funny looking back, they totally had me down pat. Like they knew, they could tell that I needed movement and excitement. Like I build my own companies because I'm just like, I need to build the thing in my head. And they said in the interview, it's going to take probably 6 months just to get an approval to like run a certain workshop. And I was like, I don't think I could work in that environment. So thank you for turning me down for that job. So sometimes when they make the decision for you, it is the right decision. And they see something that we don't always see. So just know that like, as you're working through this, the story you tell is going to be really important. Why did you make these transitions? And the more important thing, what did you learn from each transition that informed the next move? That's what we need to really talk about. Because a lot of times, and this is in our presentation here, we kind of forget to tie our past to our future, right? We say, today, I'm trying to break into web development. Okay, what'd you do before that? I don't want to talk about that. Let's talk about web development. Okay, what have you done as a web developer? Nothing yet. I want you to hire me. Okay, I'm not sure where to go with this conversation, right? What we need to say is, I started in customer service. I learned all these things about myself that led me into web development, where I'm really good at user research because of my software, because of my customer service background. And now I'm excited to bring both of these skills into your business to help you grow, and connecting that in that way. Does that help? Cool.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Yeah, because this reminds me, or well, this is a long track of like what I'd like to do, because I worked for a startup prior to this, and I wanted to switch roles, and like I always thought that it might not be wise to reach out, because they know, like I left that job, I did the boot camp, and then I'm going back and I'm saying like, hey, I have all these skills in this like short amount of time. So I'm wondering like how I could come back, you know, with that same energy that you were explaining, I mean, confident, like, hey, like I learned like these skills in like a short amount of time, which can show you that I'm valuable. Like, is there anything more to add to that?
So you left a company, took the boot camp, and now you want to go back to the company. Am I getting that right?
Yeah, just in a different role. Yeah.
In a different role. Do you have good contacts at that company? People who like you?
Yeah, I'd say so.
Cool. So what I would do is I would get coffee with them and just talk about your experience in the boot camp, because they're going to ask you about it. What was it like? Like, how was quitting? How was the boot camp? What's been happening? And go like, here's what I'm so excited about. And, you know, I would love to come back to the company. I enjoyed working there, and I'd love to do some stuff there. Do you have any recommendations on who I should reach out to talk about that and ask for advice? And asking them advice will put them into kind of an advisor role for you. You're kind of giving them some status and like making them feel good. And then they're gonna be like, oh yeah, well, we loved working with you before, and now you've got these skills. How can we maybe apply those? Maybe you can take your old job with an additional like add-on or something like that. You know, I don't know how big of a change it is for you, but I would just start by reconnecting with people kind of casually. And it will inevitably come up that you're job searching and that you finished the boot camp and all that kind of stuff. And that will probably lead to them asking you some questions, which you can just answer honestly. And then that'll plant the seeds of maybe coming back.
Okay. And the entire company, or most of the companies like remote. I'm wondering how I would initiate that conversation.
With other companies?
Or like with like workers, because I mean I had a boss and she's still working there, but yeah, I'm just kind of wondering like how I would initiate that conversation since coffee.
Yeah, I would probably reach out and say, hey, I just want to thank you.
Or somebody I like within the company that I found on LinkedIn that is within the role.
If you're connected with your old man, I mean, you could do both. You could reach out to people who be like, hey, I used to work here in a different role. I left to go to a boot camp and now I'm interested in what you do. Would you be up for coffee? That'd be a really interesting conversation. You could also reconnect with your old boss and say, hey, I really appreciate, the work that we did together. Would you be up for a catch-up coffee? And I want to hear how things have been going since I left. And then maybe that'll lead to like, do you have any recommendations on who I should reach out to on the tech team or something like that? And maybe they can make an introduction for you. So there's a lot of different ways to go about it. But always be reaching out with gratitude, curiosity, and a desire to help, rather than saying, I want a job. If you say, I want a job, you put people on the defense. If you say, I really appreciate the work we've done in the past. I'm excited about what you're doing now, and I'm curious how I can help. Then they start going, oh, this person's just very helpful. We like helpful people. Let's bring them on the team. All right, I hope that gives you a little bit of a framework to work in. I know the actual message will be tough to craft, but you can always hit me up on LinkedIn if you need help with that. Just let me know.
All right, perfect. Thank you.
And this kind of comes down to, again, saying the things that they want to hear rather than the things that we want to say. I have a client who always says what he wants to say. Not always, but sometimes he'll say what he wants to say to be heard, and it comes off too strong. And so what we really want to do is go, well, what do they care about? So think about Nike, right? They don't come to you and say, buy our shoes because our shareholders want money. That'd be the weirdest advertisement ever. Shareholders need it, right? Like terrible branding. What they say is, do you like hiking? And you go, I love hiking. Do you hate it when it's raining and you start slipping while hiking? Oh yeah, I don't like that. Well, our new hiking boots are like the best at gripping the mountains so you don't slip while hiking. Okay, I'll consider purchasing those, right? Because you've already committed to the idea and they have put themselves into your mindset of what you want. If they said, give us money and buy our shoes, even Supreme, right? Like, why do people buy a brick with the logo of Supreme on it?
It's a great question.
It's a great question. What do you think the answer is? Status with your friends, status on social media. So what they're selling you is not a brick. They're selling you status. And if you don't care about status, guess what? You're not going to buy that brick, right? So they have to say, hey, who in the world cares about social media clout? And there's plenty of people. So they go, me. And they go, if you have this brick that there's only 3 of, you're going to look cooler than the other person's social media thing. And you're going to go, yay. And then you're going to like shoot a Supreme gun with cash into their pockets. So these are the things that I would never buy that brick, right? I'm wearing basic ass tees. But the thing is that they understand what makes people want to act and they talk to that. They don't say, hey, we're Supreme. We put a basic logo on cheap products and then charge a huge premium for it. Come buy our stuff. That'd be a really terrible marketing message for them. It would not work. Or maybe it would in some reverse psychology weird thing, right? So when you're talking to companies, what you need to say is, I lost you after the hiking shoes. I hear you. So what matters when you're talking to these companies is to say, my wants and needs only matter insofar as they help your company succeed. Do I want free lunch? Do I want mentorship? Do I want good pay? Yes, but I'm not going to get any of those things if I can't convince you that this role will make you look good and make this company money, right? What do they say? Make your boss look good and you'll always succeed, or something like that. I don't know. I'm probably misquoting that. It's probably not always true. But if you do a good job making them feel good, they're going to want to try and reciprocate. So always talk in terms of what they care about. If you came to me and you said, hey, Martin, you're a career coach, can you help me? And I said, you know what? I really just love chatting with people. Super fun. Really enjoy it. Love having coffee and chatting with people. You're like, great. What do you do as a coach? I chat with people. Love coffee, chat with people. It's my thing. You're like, can you rewrite my effing resume, man? Like, what the hell, right? Like, do you even care that I get a job? Like, what's going on? Oh, I just love talking about taboos and like talking about money, you know? It's like, dude, are you going to help me network or interview or what? Like, tell me what you do. What value are you giving me so that I know that this money's going to a good thing? All right. So I think that's enough on that point. Job boards or billboards. We hit on this already, but you've got to look at job boards as marketing, propaganda. All right. They're trying to make themselves sound cool as a company by putting up this job board. Why do they have their mission statement in the job description? Do any of you give a crap what the mission statement is? Like what their values statement is when you're trying to get a job? Probably not. You don't care about the $10,000 mission statement they paid someone to write, right? What you care about is, will you hire me? But they put it in there because it's all ego driven, right? The company is showcasing the company and trying to sell the company and trying to sound cool as a company. Well, of course we don't hire anyone with less than 3 years experience. We're changing the world. Our company is. It's like, sure you are. All right. Most companies suck at what they do, let alone changing the world. So knock them off their high horse a little bit. Stop thinking these companies are amazing places that are going to solve your life problems. These companies are just a bunch of people with their hair on fire trying to figure things out and not lose their jobs. All right. I'm being over the top, but I'm trying to pull you back to the middle. Okay. If you think working at Google is amazing, I can give you 10 people who hate it. All right. I literally got off the phone with someone who's like, if I don't get a job at Amazon, I don't think there's anywhere else I want to work. And the next call I had was, I hate my job at Amazon and I can't wait to leave. So this is what I get to see as a coach, and just really realize that all these companies, when you get the marketing aside, it's just a job. It's a job. It pays the bills. You want it to be good. You don't want it to be toxic. You want to keep an eye out for things that are like red flags. But for the most part, a job is a job, and smaller companies that you've never heard of might even be the best places to work. So throwing a lot out there. If you don't know, ask questions. And this is one of the big things. Like, I think the biggest fear we have with imposter syndrome is looking like we're stupid, right? I don't want to look stupid. So, now I've got that song stuck in my head. Thanks, Brandon. I almost sang it. So there's this great thing that happens when we let go of trying to be know-it-alls. We get to ask a lot of questions. It's far better to be the person that asks a lot of questions in an interview than the person that pretends to have all the answers. For anyone who doesn't know what we're talking about, there's a Bo Burnham song about Amazon that was just quoted. It's TikTok. Yeah, TikTok went crazy for that. So there's this thing that happens where we're in interviews, and I actually had someone, an alumni event that I did, and he goes, I ask the person progressively more difficult questions to see when they're going to be honest with me about not knowing an answer. And he goes, and some people will never be honest. They will bullshit me until I ask them questions that I don't know the answers to. And he goes, what I'm looking for is someone who says, I don't know that, but I could learn it pretty quick. And I have experience with these things that are similar to it. How relevant is that to the role? And do you have any recommendations on what I should start studying to be ready to go on day one? That's a good answer to I don't know, right? Asking questions. So that's what we can do, is ask more questions. Know what you know, learn as much as you can, and let the questions fill in the gaps. All right. Maybe that'll be the new Rickroll, the Bo Burnham's. Just 20 seconds of Jeffrey Bezos.
I got the whole class earlier this year really good. I just have to brag. So I'm still pretty proud of it. I rickrolled them real good.
I think
convinced them I didn't know what Star Wars was.
I think someone did a phishing campaign with my email in one of my cybersecurity classes and rickrolled everyone.
Wild.
So
Wild.
bravo to them. And remember, we're trying to let go of perfection. Like, there is no perfect person for a job. And anytime a company is like, oh my God, we hired the best person ever, they're always disappointed. So they should really chill. And we need to realize that no company's perfect. All right. No company's perfect and no hire is perfect. Everyone has drawbacks. Everyone has issues. So what we want to be doing is saying, how do I just show up well and control the tone? I don't know the answers to everything. I don't need to know the answers to everything, but I can be curious, excited, ask good questions, answer things to the best of my ability, and move on. All right. So here's that them first kind of summation. Why are they hiring? What skills do you bring that solve problems? And what is that ROI? So then we have to share our stories. All right. So this is getting more into like interview stuff, you know, networking conversations. How do you actually explain your work, right? We can talk theoretically. And what do you think the most common thing people say when you ask about their experience? So why do you want to work here? What do you think people say? I like to solve problems and I want to make a difference. All right. So you like to solve problems, right? Has anyone said this? Is this on anyone's resume right now? I'm seeing some smiles, but no one wants to fess up. It's all good. Whenever I say, give me your pitch, and someone says, I'm a problem solver, I like to solve problems, I go, okay, I'm sure someone needs their dog walked. Do you want to go solve that problem? And they go, well, no, not that problem. And I go, well, so you don't like to solve problems. You like to solve a very specific set of problems. What set of problems do you like to solve? And they go, coding problems. Okay, which kinds of coding problems? Front end or back end? Oh, back end problems. Okay, data focused or algorithms or like what? Oh, data. I really like data analysis. Okay, so say you like to solve data analysis problems. Like, let's get down into the meat of it. Anthony, I see your hand.
Yeah. Does critical thinking fall under that?
Mm-hmm.
I think that word might be floating around there.
What are you critically thinking about?
Versions.
Are you critically thinking about Bo Burnham's most recent special? Right?
Yeah, no. It's gonna be more like coding focused, but
yeah.
I
So
just put like critical thinker. So
yeah, any of these things that don't mean anything, you know, like if I say I'm a hard worker, is anyone going to ever put I'm a lazy worker on their resume? No. So me saying I'm a hard worker would never be disagreed with, right? But if I said, so it doesn't mean much. But if I said I am a technical, data-focused person who solves coding problems, well, that wouldn't describe me, Martin McGovern. I would never write that because that doesn't describe me at all. If I were to describe myself, I'm someone who can sit on a phone call with anyone in any state of emotion, right? I bet most coders couldn't do that, right? I don't think a coder could sit with someone who's complaining about their divorce for 15 minutes and still make that a productive coaching call. I don't think most people could handle like the really heavy topics like suicide and like things like that come up in coaching, right? That's what I'm good at. What I'm not good at is predictive analysis. So that's what I need to explain. Please don't ask me to do math. Like, please don't ask me to do math, right? Like, so what you want to do is you want to lean on the things that are true to you and not use generic stuff, right? So when you say things like that, you say, I don't understand the value of my work. And I want you to understand the value of your work, right? So really sit down, and you can write down these kind of 4 categories here. When you're going through and trying to think of stories to tell in an interview, you don't need too many. You need like 4 to 6. You don't need to download a list of 100 questions and come up with a unique answer for every question. You need to have a general set of stories that you like to tell, kind of like a politician, and pull focus in the story to the point that matters, okay? So if I were to tell you about a time that I showed leadership, I would talk about this coaching program that I led. If I were to tell you about a conflict that I've had with a coworker, I would talk about a conflict that existed within that coaching program that I led. All right. So that one story answers those 2 questions and probably a bunch more if I just tell a different aspect of the story. So think about that. A time you struggled, a time you succeeded, a time of conflict, a time of leadership, and get your stories written out on paper so that when you get to the interview, you already know what stories you're trying to tell and you're not trying to come up with stuff on the top of your head. Now, this one's a bit of a tough one. So what questions come up when I say this? Where do you maybe get a little bit nervous, or does it not make so much sense?
What if you really don't have like examples like in your head, or let's say like you just like a square, and you kind of just like did everything by the book. You don't really have anything that like you've struggled with, succeeded, conflicted, or like led anything. Like what if you just like they ask you like, hey, like what's like we're looking for probably some leaders in this role. Are you like a leader or a follower, and what do you do? And it's just like, well, I don't know.
Well, have you done any leadership stuff in the past?
Well, I have, but like I'm saying, like it just like as an example, like
Sure.
like I've never really struggled with anything. Like everything was just kind of just like there, and I just kind of just did it. Like
Well,
an
then-
example, like
Go ahead.
do you kind of like stretch the truth a little bit of like what you had a problem with, or what
That's a great
had
question. How
time
much
with?
do you lie on these things?
I'll give you my coaching answer and then I'll give you the real answer. So, first of all, just don't lie, because that's going to screw you up. And then if you're like caught in a lie, God forbid, like you're just going to drive yourself nuts. The coaching answer is stretching the truth. Well, it depends on what you mean by stretching the truth. All right. Like marketers stretch the truth. The company is stretching the truth. I say stretch it as far as they stretch it. When they put up a job description and they say they want all these things in the role and they actually don't need all those things in the role, they're stretching the truth. When they say we care about our employees and we're going to make everyone in our, everyone who works here the CEO someday, clearly not true, right? Like these companies are selling themselves and you're selling yourself. And there needs to be a certain level of confidence that you speak with that might not feel true to your insecurities. All right. You're not supposed to show up as your most insecure self, which most people think is their authentic self, right? My authentic self is me on the couch crying at the end of the day because everything is so hard. Well, that's not going to get you a job. All right. So be the best version of who you are. Don't lie. Don't make stuff up. Like I'm not making up stories of people that I coached. I've literally been on the phone with someone who talked about suicide. I've literally been on the phone with someone who was complaining about their divorce. I literally was on the phone with someone who has sexual trauma and that's impacting her job search. Like these are real conversations I have. So they're real stories I can tell, but I didn't always have stories like this. My stories used to be in this marketing campaign, I wanted to have the button to be blue and they wanted the button to be green. And we had a debate over which color the button should be while A/B testing was our solution. And it's just like a boring story, but it was a conflict that I had, So I think the problem here is not necessarily the lying or the stretching of truths or anything like that. The question here is, why do you feel like you have to tell an insane story. Like, you can just tell a basic, simple story as long as the lesson from it is relevant to the role. So whenever someone is asked what their strengths and weaknesses are, they always say, my strength is that I'm really good at problem solving, and my weakness is that I procrastinate. And I go, great, that's everyone. Welcome to the human race. What is that going to do to help the person who's hiring this role make a decision on you? Like, what you should say is, I'm really good at data analysis and putting together predictive models. Here's an example of a time I put together a predictive model. I'm really not great at public speaking. I'm kind of an introvert. So it's best when I put on a team with an extrovert who loves to give the presentations, and I can feed them the data for their presentations. That's how I work best on a team. Of course, I could present, I'm just not as good as extroverts. Now I know where to put you on the team and what to assign you, right? So it's not about our big insecurities and our big, like boastful sides. It's about what is relevant and helpful to the role for them to make a decision. All right. Mike, you've had a hand up for a while, so I'm going to call on you.
Yeah. So I heard you mention something about, you make your notes, this and that. Would you say that, and maybe it's not the same with all interviews, I don't know, but if we make notes, is it considered professional to walk into an interview with a list of notes on how you're going to answer a question?
Well, let's break that down. So when I'm saying make notes, I'm talking about like outlining your stories for yourself. Like, have 5 or 6 stories that you like to tell, and have those in your head. You can make notes. Like, I always bring a notebook to an interview, and it says, what's the title of the job I'm applying to? What's the company? Who am I talking to on this call? So I don't forget their names, because I'm terrible at that. And what are some things about the role that I definitely want to try and touch on? So I'll be like, they said they needed a coach who can write curriculum, so tell the curriculum story. Or they said they need someone who can present well. All right, I'm going to tell the time I give a presentation that went really well. And then I leave a lot of space for like me to write things down during the conversation. And I'll even say like, hey, I'm going to take some notes while we're talking. I hope that's okay. And they're like, yeah, sure, whatever. And I'll be like, oh, I want to come back to that. I want to ask that at the end. I want to do this. And then I have some pre-written questions that I ask at the end of the interview, so that I know if I have nothing in my head, if I draw a blank, I can just look at that, right? So definitely bring notes if you've got them. Does that answer your question?
Yeah. I mean,
Cool.
yeah, pretty
Yeah,
much.
like I'll sometimes write down like final project, like just to jog my memory in case I forget or something like that.
I guess so for an example of like, I worked in oil and gas for 20 years and I'm going through a career change. So if I was going to go and apply for another oil and gas company at this point, I've never done it, but I didn't know if it would be frowned upon to do it. But I kind of make my own notes in my head in case the scenario comes up of certain accomplishments or something within a 20-year period. There are certain things that might not be your biggest accomplishment, but might weigh heavier on a Richter scale that they would like to hear over, which you might see as your biggest accomplishment.
Yeah.
And, stuff like that, I think might be worthy of noting, because again, like you've stressed, it's not all about you. It might be a bit more of a focus on what they want to hear or see out of you.
Yeah. Look, I mean, my biggest accomplishment is the company that I currently run, and that I built. But they don't care about that, because that just sounds like I'm competing with them. So
Right.
In the interview, I don't talk about career therapy as my biggest accomplishment. I talk about the person that I coached into a job, who got the job at whatever company, So yeah, I think you're absolutely right. And this is where I'm trying to really hit home. It's what stories are meaningful to you so that you actually come across like you care in this interview, right? What stories were formative for you? Sometimes the smallest things have the biggest impact, right? So like the biggest project I ever worked on was the launch of the Discover It card. I've never told that story in an interview because it's boring as hell. Like, it's just like, what did I do? Spreadsheets. I don't know, like stuff I never want to do again. So I don't talk about that. Like, these are things that are unnecessary when you realize that it's about connecting with the person you're talking to, building trust and building rapport. And that's why I say, like, don't talk about your biggest insecurities when they say, what's your weakness? Talk about a weakness that's relevant to them and reframe it from weakness to, what do I want to spend 80% of my time on? And what do I want to spend 20% of my time on? What is the 20% of my job? What is the skill that I want to be the least amount of my job, right? And that way you can start thinking about it practically. Or tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. This one gets people in trouble because then they talk about a legitimate fight that they are still in with a current coworker, and they turn bright red and they ruin the tone of the interview. I've done this. I'm like, my interview was going so well. We were jiving. And then all of a sudden I'm angry and they can sense it. And I don't know what to do because I'm like bright red because this just happened. And it
I think that
ruins it.
question is a setup.
Yeah, in
I
a
hate
way.
that question. It's a complete setup. So.
In a way, but it's also like they're trying to assess some things. Like, all right, so here's like a good answer to that question. Tell me about a time you had a conflict with a coworker. Well, on a team, I'm typically a bit more quiet. All right. And I'm quiet because I'm much more of a listener than a talker. And that sometimes gets me in trouble because sometimes I have things that I really want to say in a meeting and I don't always voice them. So I've had to find workarounds for that. For instance, there was one project I was working on, and now I'm just making stuff up here for you guys, but here's a way you can answer it. There was one project I was working on where I thought it would be really important for us to run customer interviews. We ended up not doing that, and it caused some real issues down the road. So the conflict that I had was really with myself, not even with anyone else. But what I learned from that situation is that I need to speak up. And what I've done to rectify that is if I don't say something in a meeting, because sometimes I get quiet, I always send a follow-up. I'll take notes from the meeting and send a follow-up email to everyone, and I'll throw in my questions or my thoughts into that follow-up. That way it's helping the team and I'm getting my points heard. All right. That would be an amazing answer to that question. And it's not even an interpersonal conflict. It's just a conflict, right? So these are different things. And again, I'm kind of riffing here. So maybe I could go back and even make that more tight. But these are the things that I want you to start thinking about, which is how do I help this person make a decision on this interview, right? It's not, am I perfect for the role? It's how do I get this person to trust that I could be perfect for this role if they move me forward, and that I won't, well, and here's the kicker. How do I get this person to trust that I won't embarrass them if they give me their stamp of approval? Because a lot of times people are operating out of fear in the hiring process. I don't want to look stupid in front of my boss. I don't want to look stupid bringing someone on. Like, how many times have you gotten an email from someone? Maybe this is just me, but it's like, hey, can you recommend me for this job? And I'm like, I actually don't know who you are. So no, because I don't want you to bail on that job and then I look like an idiot. I can share a quick story. I had someone reach out to me and they're like, hey, Martin, I noticed that this place is hiring. Would you be willing to put in a good word for me? Because you work there or you've worked with them. So I did. And I heard nothing back for 2 months. And I emailed the person. I go, hey, did you ever get that job? And all they responded to me was, it didn't work out. What? Like, did I just recommend someone who totally like blew off the internet? Like, did you blow off the internet? Like, what happened? Like, now I'm anxious because I don't know how you treated like my referral, right? And I don't know if my reputation is not like these are the things that people are operating out of, like safety and safeguarding, as are job seekers. So these are all things that we want to think about. Anyway, I feel like I've gone way on a tangent. I'm going to try and reel us back in. Any final thoughts on that you want me to resolve before we jump back into the presentation? Cool. So we want to be specific. Talk about what you did in the classroom, outside of the classroom, right? Talk about all the different extracurriculars that you're working on, the home setup that you have, or the projects that you're working on, or the things you're volunteering for, or like if you're doing she codes or whatever it might be. Talk about all of it. These are all helpful things. And then organize your stories. Has anyone here heard the STAR method? All right, so the STAR method is just a way of organizing a story. All right, so every single interview question should have one answer with a story to back it up. One answer. So what are your strengths and weaknesses? One strength, one weakness, one story to back each one up. Tell me about a conflict you've had with a coworker. One conflict with a story to back it up. All right, so the STAR method is a way of setting up that story. I was working at this place with these people. That's the situation. This problem arose that we had to solve. That's the T, the task, or the problem. I created SPARL as a really terrible acronym to play on this because I wanted to add some things into it. So yeah, just start having conflicts with each other just to mess things up and have someone to do the interview. Don't take that advice. So we got the situation, the problem, the action you took to solve the problem, and the result. And what I added to this is the L, the learning. All right. So I was working here with these people. We had this project that was assigned to us. I did this thing to solve the problems of that project, and the result we got was X. What I learned from this situation that I'm going to take into my next role is, and that's what the company wants to hear. They want to hear what you learned from your experience and how it will apply in the future. If there's one thing I can really hit home here for the interview, is that it's less about what you've done and more about what you've learned from what you've done. So if you're talking about your history, right? I worked in customer service. Now I'm a web developer. What was the transition between them? I worked in customer service. I learned this about myself, which is what led me into web development. All right. That transition is the most important piece. And that learning is the most important piece. So that's my second talk today. So I'm losing my voice, but we'll make it through. And I've hit this home. What you learned is key. And we already touched on this a little bit, but again, no politician gets on stage and says, boy, I hope they ask me about Joe the farmer. No, they're like, I'm telling that Joe the farmer story, whether they like it or not, right? Don't be a total politician because that's exhausting, but take a lesson. And then speak to what you can do, all right? We spend so much time worrying about if we've done it or how many years we've done it. And again, the job search is sort of set up to make you paranoid about that. But it's more about potential. They're looking for your potential. And do you have confidence in your own potential? And I would hope you do, because you just spent a bunch of money to learn this skill, to build a baseline for your future potential, right? So leverage that confidence that you have from whatever project that you finished recently that you feel good about. Like leverage that, like somehow hold on to that. Like I have learned a lot, and maybe take yourself back to the beginning when you didn't know much. Like you got to see your own progress and your own development. It's so weird. It's like we learn something new and then we kind of plateau and we sort of normalize to the plateau. And then we're like, I still don't know anything. Oh, I learned something new. I still don't know anything. Oh, I learned something new. I still don't know anything. And that's imposter syndrome, right? That's why we always feel that way. And, you could be a veteran of 30 years and suddenly someone's like, hey, can you do this accounting thing? And you're like, I don't know how to do that. And now you feel like an idiot, So always just realize that you are progressing, even if it doesn't feel that way. So again, what are your 4 to 6 struggles and successes? What did you learn from these experiences? and how will they inform your future work? All right. Now to the pitch. I want you to incorporate your past in your pitch because that's going to be your differentiator. I want you to simplify your narrative, and I want you to tie it into the company's needs. So we're going to bring everything together here. All right. And we've gone over here on time. So thanks for bearing with me and for all your great questions all throughout. What do you think you shouldn't say when someone says, tell me about yourself?
Well, I'm still pretty new to this, but
Yep. I'm pulling from the wrong slide here, but yes, I'm still pretty new to this. If someone says, why are you making this transition? We should not say, well, I didn't like the work, so I quit. I changed jobs to make more money. You can tell me those things because I'm your coach and I don't care, right? But at a certain point, like that's only partially true, right? Because you could have been a lawyer. You could have been I don't know, you could have just gone and lived in the woods somewhere. Why did you choose this, right? Brandon's on board. So we chose web development for a reason, or we chose whatever it is that you're studying for a reason, right? Why did you choose what you chose? All right. Because what they hear is, well, I quit when things aren't perfect and I'll probably quit this job if I don't like it. And that's not what we want to signal. All right. We want to focus on the positive changes, the things that we've been progressing towards and what we've learned about ourselves. It's good to run away from something, but it's better to run towards something. All right. And probably best to have both. So incorporate your past, use it as a differentiator and really say like, I'm a career coach. If that's all you knew of me, you'd be like, well, what qualifies this person to be a career coach? And the answer is my marketing experience. And my education experience. But like, you'd have to dig in to find that if I didn't tell you, right? And now you understand why so much of what I talk about comes from a marketing and sales perspective, right? So for you, you're probably going to bring in some of these skills. Let's say you're a teacher, right? What are the skills you bring from your education background into this next role? How is that going to help? Look for those connective tissues, right? Double down on the present. Really lean into what what you have learned. I've learned these things and I could do them if given the time and resources, which is what a job is. A job is time and resources to accomplish a goal, right? So if given the time and resources, I could do these things. Yeah, go gadgets, solve this code. Yeah, that's actually from a different thing that I used to teach on personal branding, which is ask people what fictional character they would describe you as. And I always got Inspector Gadget. Don't know why. Well, actually, I kind of know why. But, and the alter egos of superheroes, but not the superheroes. So basically the nerdy part of the superhero. So I was like Peter Parker or Clark Kent. So again, it's fun to like do a lot of these exercises. And if you treat the job search a little bit more like a game, if you treat communication skills as something that you are learning rather than something you're naturally good at or bad at, like I was terrible at networking when I started, still have my issues, but like I started looking at it as an actual skill I could improve at rather than a natural, like inherent thing, right? I'm naturally introverted, but if I do these things, I can become comfortable, right? And if you look at it that way, the same way you did with learning how to code or learning how to do anything, the first few times you do it, it's going to break, but eventually you'll figure it out, right? You just keep doing it. And then project yourself into their future, not just the future, but their future. If you hire me, we will accomplish all the things that you want to accomplish, not what I want to accomplish. I'm here to serve you because this is a job, right? So explain how you can help. And here's how we can pull it together. So this is a really simple way to talk about the tell me about yourself question. All right. Tell me about yourself. I started my career doing this. What I learned about myself was this. That led me here, which is why I'm excited to talk to you and see where I can bring value to your business. Past, present, future. All right. Any questions on this before we move on? Does anyone want to give it a shot? I'd love to hear someone give it a go. I used to do this. What I learned about myself was this. Now I do this. And I can't wait to work at a company that will hire me for it.
Can you hear me?
Yeah, go.
Perfect. So I worked as an interpreter, as a linguist for 6 years.
Cool.
And I realized has that, epiphany that I cannot stand when two people are speaking in a language that I don't understand a single word out of. One day, by mistake, I pressed F12 while being on Chrome, and I saw the inspect menu, and I didn't understand a single word what was going on in there, and I got really mad. And that's when I realized, like, I can do this. It's a language. I am a linguist. I spoke multiple languages. I can easily add one more. And then the more I got deeper in it, I actually fell in love with it more and more. And now I'm trying to combine both words of language and software engineering to have a new goal. So that's why I'm here.
Perfect. One thing I might toss in there is, and now I'm utilizing my ability to code to help companies better communicate with their customers. Because again, linguistics is communication, right? So like just adding that little extra, like, and now I'm going to help you communicate better with your code. And like, perfect. Everything you said there was wonderful. I'm just trying to add to it in some small way, but I love what you had, like that whole narrative, language, and maybe depending on your style, you might say mad, but if they like have a weird like reaction to that, you could say that's when I got energized or something. Like look at how people respond to the things that you say and like adjust it as you go. But I loved everything you said there. Ronnie on the road. Love it. Got some good comments going over here. Anyone have questions on this? Cool. So here's a real simple pitch outline for you. So if it's too hard to kind of come up with that off the top of your head, what you can say is merging a background in previous role with current role. I help companies accomplish these goals. Connects your past to your present and their future. All right. So past, present, future. Here's what that could look like. Merging a background in customer service and web development, I help companies create amazing experiences for their users online. And you could even toss in, I help companies engage their users through amazing online experiences. All right. You got a minute here? Try and write your pitch and put it in the chat. Happy to answer any questions while folks are writing.
How honest can I be in an interview?
What is
I've been thinking about.
Go ahead.
I'm thinking about this question. If somebody asked me, "What is your strong ability? Why do we want you? And what is your weakest ability?" Like, if I tell I care too much, that has been said billions of trillions of times, and I think they expect that answer more than anything else because of so many people said it. For me personally, the tenacity for me, like my weakness. But if I want to say I might not be the best coder you will start with, but I can learn fast because I can do this, or will I say something else? Like me being honest, like I know I'm not going to be the best coder you will have in this company as of now, because I just came in from, a small, I know they expect this. Like they know that I came from a boot camp. I don't have that much experience, but how honest can I be in that question?
So the first thing I'll say is stop assuming you know what they're thinking. This is, I think, the trap of boot camp grads. They know I'm coming from a boot camp, so already I'm at a disadvantage. That's a terrible mindset. You're already shooting yourself in the foot, right? Like that is, like I could say every single time I talk to someone, I'm not a certified coach. I could prime myself with that thought before every single conversation and every single call. And I could drive myself crazy. Or I could go get a certification, or I could realize that they don't really matter and that there's plenty of coaches with certifications who are terrible at what they do. Like the truth is that it doesn't matter if you get the other things right, if you understand what they care about. So when you're answering that question, again, you're coming from What is it that I should say? How honest should I be? And my answer is, what do they care to hear? Like, do they even care if you went to a boot camp? Sometimes we
Gotcha.
make them care. Like, here's a thing that people do. At the end of an interview, I had someone, oh, this made me so sad. They go, at the end of the interview, I asked them, what could I do better in my next interview? And I go, okay, so you just had 45 minutes on the phone with this person. Everything was going good. They liked you. They had all these positive thoughts in their head. And you ended by saying, what do you hate about me? And what did I do wrong? You ended by saying, I'm probably not going to get this job. So what could I do better in the future? You ended by making the assumption that you failed, even before they told you you failed. Don't do that. Like, start with, I hope this conversation's been going well. Is there anything else that you were hoping to hear that we didn't get to, right? Is there anything about this role that would be surprising that I should know? Are there any tools I should start learning at home right now to be ready to go on day one? Like, these are things that show that you care about performance. So again, to the strengths and weaknesses question, you're right. That's a terrible strength. Don't say that. You care too much. What does that even mean, right? Like, I might care too much as a coach, because I'll like literally give people free hours of coaching because I'm like, you're in a tough spot and I don't want to charge you and I feel bad. Like, I do that all the time and it's a terrible business decision, but I do it. But I would never say that in an interview, right? Like, I care too much. What I would say is, I'm really good at sitting with people in heavy emotions, because that's a productive thing that they need to hear and that they need to know about their coaches. That's kind of the same as I care too much, but it's practical. So I would say, what's the practical thing that you could say to them that would be helpful? And so in your case, I would say your strength is the ability to learn languages quickly. That sounds like an amazing strength. I can't do that. I try
But
to
in the
learn
field, we
Spanish.
all learn.
What?
In the field, we all learn that the language itself is not the key, and it's true for other languages too.
So if that's not the key, then there might be something else, but like maybe communication is a strength, right?
Mhm.
I'm really good at learning languages and communicating well with others and understanding what people need to hear in order to get things moving forward. Or I'm really good at educating people on this, or I'm really good at like teaching this, or whatever the thing might be. I'm really good at presentations. I'm really extroverted. You don't have to answer everything. You just need to give an example of something you're good at. And again, they're not assessing, is this person perfect with this answer? What they're saying is, does this person get themselves? Do they have confidence? Do they understand what they're good at and not good at? Like, do they have self-awareness is really what they're asking. And so the self-awareness is, when I'm assigned these tasks, I crush it. When I'm assigned these tasks, I struggle. Can you please assign me more of the ones that I crush it and less of the ones that I struggle? And that's really what we're trying to get at. So whenever I interview with a company, I'll literally say, I've been put on a role before, where on the first day they said, here's the spreadsheet, create a predictive analysis on when these people will get jobs. And I looked at them and I did not know what to do. And I said, how do I do that? And they said, well, there's this formula over here. You can use that. And you just have to adjust it for like different things as you go. And I go, how do I do that? I was like, I don't know how to do that. And it was a really tough part of my job for a year and a half. But my next job, I said, don't give me spreadsheets. Don't ask me to do productive analyses. Send me everyone who's crying. And that's what they did. They said, just track things and we'll give it to the data people. I said, great. So I tracked everything. I can use spreadsheets. I can use HubSpot. I just can't do the predictive analysis. And then they said, this person's crying. Can you get on the phone with them? And I said, you got it, because no coder wants to do that, right? So anyway, I hope that's helpful. It was a very long rant, but if you want to shoot me a message on LinkedIn, we can go a little bit deeper into like your specific ones.
There's going to be a lot of questions coming up.
Yeah,
too.
cool.
Like, later on along the way.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Anthony, how about you?
Yeah, so kind of talking about that last story that you were talking about, like the person was doing great in the interview, actually killing it, and all these good thoughts. It's like, oh, I could do this and that. Oh, perfect. He's just writing down. And then at the end, to end it on a negative note, just turn around. What do you hate about me?
Yeah.
That kind of made me laugh because it's like, well, ending on a negative note is not good, but it made me think about like, because I kind of have this script for like, if I'm gonna fail an interview, it's kind of like I'm gonna have a notebook and all this stuff. I'm gonna write down like, how would you take a question like, what can I do to improve? See, how would I want to word this? What can I do to improve on maybe like next time, like next interview, improve upon my skill set pretty much.
Yeah. So my first answer to that is you will not get honest answers from interviewers about that kind of stuff. And maybe rarely you will, but like for the most part, if we were in an interview and I asked you, do you like working here? Your answer will always be, yes, I love working here, because you're on the clock with the company right now, representing the company. So I'm not going to get an honest answer. The person I want to ask that question to is the person who's just fired and say, how did you like working there? Right? When I'm in an interview and I say, is there anything that I could have improved in this interview? I'm priming them to lead, because they're going to go write down their notes right after we get off the call. And the most recent thought in their head is going to be the things you did wrong, and they're going to write those down. So what I would do instead is say, is there anything else that you were hoping to cover that we didn't get to that I can address before we wrap up today? And that way they go, yeah, actually, I really wanted to know what your thoughts were on blank. And then you can do that. And then they go, this person asks great questions, and they can write that in their notebook afterward. Where do you get feedback on how to improve your interviews? That's kind of what you're really asking. And the answer to that is coaches are here to help, but we're expensive. So if you don't have coaches, what I would do is record yourself answering questions and listen to it. No one wants to do this. It'll hurt your eardrums. I have a podcast. I hate listening to it. I get it. But you will improve your ability to communicate tenfold by hearing yourself communicate. You'll be like, why do I say that? That doesn't make sense. That was a tangent. I got to clean up this story. So practicing in that way will be very helpful. You can also talk in a mirror. You can outline your stories. You can do a whole bunch of different things. You can do mock interviews with people. You can do it with friends. The truth is that we all kind of know what we suck at with interviews. We're nervous. We're not asking good questions, and we're not connecting with them because we're too nervous about impressing them that we don't actually make a connection. So
yeah, and that'll probably cause a person to like go through the door in like negative or bad faith.
Like just imagine.
And that was like kind of assuming that I was gonna fail before even getting to the interview. Like, oh, I already have like a backup plan.
Exactly.
You know?
Imagine going on a date and ending it with, well, I know I screwed up this date, but what could I do with future people that I date to be better? They'd be like, what? Like, it'd be the weirdest end to a date ever, right? It's like, I know we're never going to see each other again because I suck. So what could I do to improve? It's like,
at that point, the recruiter's probably not going to care.
At that point, the answer is, don't tell me you suck at the end of the interview. Like, don't signal negative things. Like, you might have done a good job if you didn't just destroy the whole, like, I've literally had people who at the end of the interview go, I just want a job. And I'm like, you ain't getting that one. Like, that's it. Like, and again, there's like a balance here of like dealing with the world as it is and also wanting to improve it. And like, we can get a whole conversation about that. But like at a certain point, it's a video game. Like, we're playing a video game and we've got to get our character all the skills it needs to beat the final boss. All right. I think I'll land on that one.
Interesting way of thinking of that.
Yeah. You can also put your pitch here that we put together, this outline, into your resume on your summary or in your LinkedIn in your about section. You can also use it to answer the tell me about yourself question. But it'll be robotic. So, only use it as far as you need it, then go off script and start riffing, because that'll be when it gets more natural. So just to wrap up, and we are getting close to the end here, I went way over, so I appreciate all of you for hanging on. how did you get here? What do you do? And how does it help me? That's what they need to hear. All right. So I'll end on that. Are there any questions before we complete the call?
I have a quick question for you.
Yeah.
So this is a lot of what you're saying is like really, really good information. It's all about kind of framing yourself well and doing well in the interview. But part of our interview process is also going to be technical.
Yep.
I guess I'm not asking for like a percentage, but we're preparing two completely different things. I'm wondering about how what's not necessarily what's more important, but how I could manage my time as far as preparing for these things.
So technical interviews are important. And one of the most important pieces of a technical interview is explaining how you got to the answer. The worst technical interviews that I've heard from people, and again, I'm not a technical person, but I work with them, is this person came in, was dead silent, did the thing and left. And like, didn't explain how they got the answer, what their thinking process was or anything. The best technical interviews are the ones where you start by saying, okay, here's the problem we're trying to solve. And even use the STAR method. Here's the problem we're trying to solve. My approach to solving this problem is going to be X, Y, and Z. Then you start doing that, you hit a problem. Okay, now that I've hit this problem, here's some of the things that I would do in a real life scenario to fix this thing. And I'm going to try this, and you try that. I've had people fail the technical interview technically, but still move on to the next round because they did a good job communicating their way to failure. And then once they failed, they said, here's what I would do differently next time to make sure that doesn't happen. Or someone bombs the technical interview and then sends a follow-up email that says, you know, I went home, I thought about it more. Here's some additional thoughts I had that I would definitely do. And it's showing your process, your thought, how you think, how you approach things, how you solve things, and showing that you're humble enough to admit when you screw up. So the technical thing, like you don't even need to be perfect at the technical thing as long as you're able to communicate what's going on, because that's what they're really assessing is, does this person, even if they don't know the answer, keep it together and explain to us what's going on. Does that help?
That does help. Yeah, actually, yeah. So
Okay.
like even in the technical interview, still a lot of it is how you engage the people who are interviewing you.
It's still behavioral because it's people looking at you. Now, you might have a take-home assignment, in which case just get it technically right as best you can and send it in with a really nice email and things like that and be on time. The technical stuff, it's really just a matter of sit down and practice. Like if you have personal projects that you can practice in the meantime so you don't get rusty, if you can do some contracts so you don't get rusty, or if you can do some volunteer work, there's a great website called volunteermatch.com or .org maybe, where you can literally do volunteer projects to keep your skills sharp, and that will build your resume. So kind of double win there. So that's more of just a matter of keeping your skills sharp and being able to admit that you don't know the answer and still move forward.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Cool. All right, everyone, I've taken up enough of your time today. Feel free to connect with me on LinkedIn if you'd like. Tons of content, podcasts, all that kind of stuff. So just keep an eye out. But been a pleasure, and good luck with your search. Keep me posted on how it's going.
Thank you.
Thank you.